We still are waiting for a few more people who are still at lunch. Sorry, it's always taking more time than expecting. Yeah, just I think we start in 2 minutes from now.
Okay, can I get an idea of how many people are in the auditorium?
Sorry, can do what do you want to get?
Just how many people are in the auditorium or expected to be in the auditorium?
So currently, let's say about 20 people.
Okay, great.
Yes, so Rainer said usually we have around 50, but just now after the lunch, I think we will lose a bit of them. The second day, it has been a long day already. So yeah, about 20 in here, and I think there are, I don't know, 8 in the website, I'm not sure. So yeah, so for those who are online, please mute your microphone and turn off your video when you are not speaking, because otherwise it can be disturbing for others. Okay. We had a strange sound.
You know what, that might have been me.
Okay.
Teams was open. Let me just close it so that doesn't happen again. There we go.
Okay, so let's start. It's my great pleasure to introduce Melissa. Melissa, she's from KAUST. She will give not really a talk, but it's a workshop. And she's currently in Canada, if I remember correctly. And so thank you very much for making the effort on joining so early for you. The floor is yours. Whenever you want to start, we are ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Diana. Let me just share my screen. Make sure everybody can see that okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can see clearly.
Fabulous. Let me just move that out of the way. Okay. My name is Melissa Manuel. I do work for KAUST, as Diana said. I am also on the I'm also on a board caucus for the Women's Caucus at the American University. Let's start that again. For the American Association for Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. So I serve as the co-chair of the Women's Caucus, and I'm also co-chair of professional development for the MENA region student affairs organization called MANASA. My research has been in organizational behavior, and so motivation, organizational commitment, and culture, specifically of expats in the Middle East. So women in the workplace responding to gender-based scenarios or remarks is something that is very interesting to me, and it is more of an interactive practice-based session. So we'll be providing some research, but really wanting to get the audience interacting to come up with ways that we can respond in a workplace that works best for you. So specifically, what is the gray zone when we're talking about responding to gender-based remarks? So first, let's take a step back on what gender discrimination is. So where a person is treated differently or unfairly on the basis of a person's sex or gender. And I really want to highlight that this is someone who's treated differently. So it's not necessarily positive or negative change, it is someone who is treated differently. So if you feel like you are being treated differently on the basis of your gender, that is called gender discrimination. So gender-based comments, in particular to females, are something that draws attention to gender, really does take away from women's contribution and ability to do their job. So changing what we say can change how we think, and that really can reduce bias. So the words that we use really do make a difference. And I know there are some people that says it doesn't make a big difference, it's not a big deal, it's really passing, but it really does make a difference. And it's important that we start to recognize that, and research really does show.
Okay, can you try again, Melissa?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's good. Okay, so okay. I think it's solved. Can you go back to the previous slide because we missed the end of the...
Yes.
Yes.
This one?
Yes. I think we hear you until the point where you said that discrimination or difference is already gender discrimination. Doesn't have to be positive or negative. And after that,
Okay.
we lost you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, yeah, so starting with gender discrimination, it's where a person is treated differently or unfairly on the basis of a person's sex or gender. And I really wanted to highlight that the word differently. So it's not necessarily positive or negative, it's differently. Would you speak to a man the same way that you'd speak to a woman, or vice versa? And the effects of gender discrimination are also similar for women working with other women. So it's not just men gender discriminating against other women or to women, but it's also women against women. So gender-based comments, particular to females, are something that draws attention to our gender and does take away from our contribution and ability. So it changes, so again, yeah, it takes away from our abilities. Changing what we say can change how we think, and this can reduce bias. And I think this is really important that we do recognize that words do have a very powerful effect. Though passé, again, it can really make a big difference. And with the gray zone, so a lot of research has been done on overt discrimination, but a lot less in that gray zone. And so this is where, again, what I consider gender discrimination against me might be different for somebody else. And what I consider acceptable, again, is different from somebody else. So it's not always the same for everybody. And so this is working with that gray zone is a comment that might not always be considered discriminatory. So let's go back here. So comments in the gray zone can be of many different things: borderline rude, a backhanded compliment, a joke, an unrelated comment that draws attention to the gender, facial expression, or skepticism over your ability to do something. And women do face this quite a bit as well. So this workshop is not necessarily just for gender, but it's also for any form of discrimination. So that can include age, race, language, physical size, or looks. And many of us do fall into multiple categories, and the effects of intersectionality can be compounded. So for example, if you are young and female, this is going to be more challenging for you than if you're just female. And what's also really important with this gray zone is because some of these comments are considered a joke or not necessarily very overt, how you react can be very challenging. Again, you could be thought of as too uptight or sensitive. So how you respond really does make a very big difference here. Okay, so why it's important not to let it go. It does allow future comments to become permissible if you don't say anything. Others also begin to see you through a different lens. And I think this is really important. The purpose of perception here, if it is perceived that you are comfortable letting these remarks slide, people will start to see that. We also start to see ourselves through a different lens, and we can question our abilities. And most importantly, I think here is that it can lead to feelings of trauma. If people kind of put you down in that really subtle gray zone type of way, that really can make a big difference on our emotional states. And political skill does matter and is critical to career advancement. So what happens when we do say something? We acknowledge what was said and question its place. There is a decreased likelihood of it repeating, and it does allow us to make a stand. And it's important we do say something because research has clearly showed that men will not gainsay other men, but women will also not stand up for other women. So you are responsible for yourself. Okay, so how do we respond? Responding is not easy. One of the biggest challenges of responding to these gray zone comments is recognizing whether it is something that was okay that was said, but it's also the emotional reaction. It really makes us very difficult to think of a response. So when I do have these workshops in person, I actually put people in the middle of the room and I have them respond, because when people are staring at you and you're feeling emotional, again, it's really difficult to put yourself in that position and you have got adrenaline going. So coming up with responses is not easy. It's also difficult if the comment is made by a superior or an authority figure. And of course, there's always a fear of the reaction that you're going to get if you do say something and how you say it, and if there's other people present. Okay, so practice responding. Gray zone means that responding harshly can backlash, especially if it was meant as a joke, even a very untactful one. And being able to match the tone and situation is important to get the result that you want. So practice helps us to be able to respond quickly and tactfully. So one of the things that I do recommend, if this is something that you are nervous about, is to watch a scene in a movie or a conflict that you see at work or in public and practice how you're going to respond. I think almost all of us have been in this situation where something happens, we don't say anything, and then we think of the perfect reply later in the evening when we're thinking and can't go to sleep. So practicing in the moment is really important and being very quick on that. So actually, I'm going to go back one. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple scenarios. I'm going to put people who are online into breakout rooms, and I'm going to ask that you, if you're in the audience, to turn to a group of 2 or 3. And we're going to go through a scenario and discuss ways that we can respond. So I want it to be very clear that there is no right answer. So some of us might not even consider any of these as issues. Some of us might want to be really strong and come back with something. Some of us might want to be really subtle. So what I do recommend is trying to match the situation as best that you can. So if it is considered a bit of a joke, then you maybe want to bring humor into it. But it's really a practice session for you to put yourself into these situations and come up with possible responses. So the first one, scenario 1, is you are running late for a meeting with a committee of about 20 to 30 of your colleagues, led by a senior executive. As you walk toward the room, you can see that they have already started discussing the new proposal. As you walk in and look for a seat, your senior executive at the head of the room comments sardonically with eyebrows raised, "Nice high heels." So how we respond, again, each person's response is going to be particular, but I'm going to ask again that you turn to 2 to 3 people, and I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to come up with possible ways to respond. And I do want to see if we can get people to actually bring our response to the table afterwards, so we can kind of discuss how it would work and what type of situation it would work on. Again, if you know your colleagues versus if you don't, if you're very comfortable with your senior executive versus if you're not, and ways that we can come up with answers. So let me just send everybody who is online into breakout rooms, and I'll give you a couple minutes to go ahead.
Now, and I started, but nice.
All right, so if I can get everybody to make their way back in, and again, record any discussions that you might have had and possible responses. And I think you may have to come to the top of the room in the auditorium to give out those responses. So we can close the breakout rooms. Okay, so coming back together, let's see if anybody has any answers. Would anybody like to share some possible responses to this scenario? And feel free to share on the chat if you're online as well. No possible answers? Okay. Well, I will share some of my possible answers. So again, really, I think this depends on the people that you're working with. So how well or how good of a relationship that you have with the people that are in the room. Yep.
Melissa, can you give us just a little few more minutes, because we just finished to organize the group, if it's possible.
Sorry.
So, so let's say 2 more minutes, okay?
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
We'll move everybody back into breakout rooms who are online as well, and let you choose your own breakout room, I think. Let's try that. Okay, I think everybody is making their way back from their breakout rooms that are online into the main session. And hopefully had a chance to work with your neighbors to come up with possible answers. Bear with us technical aspects of working both online and in person. Okay, would anybody like to share any possible answers, either online or in person?
So we have in person, we can start maybe?
Absolutely, that'd be great.
Well, I don't know what if this would be the correct answer, because I don't know what is the correct answer. Yeah, exactly.
There's no correct answer.
But yeah, there is no correct answer. But I think that we just pick clothing of his, like suit or his tie, and say like, "Oh, I like your tie. Thank you. I like your tie too," and that's it. Because I'm not gonna argue with him. I pick my battles, and it's just like, okay, you're picking something about my clothing, I'm picking something about your clothing too.
Very good. And I think that yeah, absolutely does a great job acknowledging that the fact that something was said that's really irrelevant, and does the same thing. So really good. Yeah.
Do you want someone else from the same group?
So this is very personal. So I think for everyone. Where is it? Aha. Sorry. This is very personal and it will be different for everyone. I would probably take a more passive approach because I was already coming late to the meeting. And not only that, but he's also with other 30 people, other 30 colleagues that will be judging him. So he's going to be in guard. So I would probably acknowledge my dissatisfaction non-verbally and just sit, like a prolonged silence of reproval and sit. That's it.
Okay, yeah, and again, it's your comfort level. So that's what's important here, is making sure that you feel comfortable with your response. Again, what's comfortable for somebody who's really outspoken is going to be different for somebody who's not feeling as comfortable doing that. We had one online, so the online group agreed that would have said thank you. For the online group, would you have said thank you in a certain type of way, or a nice type of thank you, or would you have made it sardonic as well? Online group is thinking. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to share their answers?
You want to share your answer? Okay, yeah, please come. Not jump to you. So just wait a minute. We have a large room.
No problem.
Yeah, so we said the same thing about also thinking or complimenting about a piece of clothing, but we're talking about how the context it would kind of change it. Like if you're the only female and they're always like making comments when you if you ever fail, like you're late, and then they link that to something about you being feminine, then like it would kind of escalate like how you feel about it. But if it's kind of a mixed group and it's just like it feels more of a joke, then maybe we wouldn't feel as strongly about it.
Yes, and tone, again, how you, the tone of the situation, but also the relationship that you already have with your colleagues, of course, is going to make a very big difference here. One of the concerns that I do have when it comes to responding is if you are a little bit more passive, if, for example, there is a proposal and you have a very strong opinion about the proposal that might be against your senior executive, how they view you from the beginning kind of sets the tone later. So something to think about. That's not always the case, but again, something to think about. So online, it looks like Shireen was saying that it would have been a poker face, and thank you, not happily, sounding a little unsure about it. Would anyone else like to share?
Yes, there is someone else from the room.
Great. Awesome. Lots of good responses.
So what we thought is a similar approach to already discussed it. So probably we would, well, first it matters the context, because if we know very well all the people in the room and maybe it's just kind of an inside joke, it's totally different.
But if we were feeling uncomfortable about it, probably we would just be passive about it in the room and then talk later with the person after the meeting, telling the person that it was uncomfortable was. Instead
Okay,
of just
good to know. Yeah, having those one-on-one conversations definitely can help, especially if there are certain boundaries that you feel comfortable about. One of the things that I do hesitate about if somebody says something that's potentially inappropriate in a meeting is when you speak to them after, and this is not always the case, but when you speak to them after, depending on how you go about it, even if you've said it in a really nice way, I have been in situations where because no one else was present for that conversation, it can get a little bit twisted sometimes if that person feels a little uncomfortable that something was said to them. When they talk about it later with their colleagues, the interpretation might get a little bit different because they're uncomfortable with it. So just something to be aware of in case you're ever in those positions. So I do recommend trying to acknowledge it in some way in front of everybody, not necessarily negatively, but some kind of acknowledgement that in front of everybody else. All right. Anybody else in the auditorium? Nope. Okay. All right. So let's go on to our second scenario. All right. So scenario 2. You and another colleague have been working on a proposal for the past few months. You both have just presented it on Zoom in front of another 10 colleagues and senior executives. After the presentation, a senior executive thanks your colleague and asks him to present it at another meeting. Your colleague agrees. There is no mention of you. Now, some people would take this scenario and say that this is not really gender discrimination here. And the reason I have included this is because research does show that women oftentimes are not given the acknowledgement of the work that they have done. Just scroll down here. Sorry. Here we go. Yeah, they're often overlooked and their contributions are often considered less valuable or challenging than that of their male counterparts. So that's why I've included this here. Again, some people would say that's not gender discrimination or it could be anybody in this situation, but I'd like to see how you might respond in this particular scenario. So if you're online, I'm going to move you back into breakout rooms and I'll give everybody about 5 or 6 minutes. You can choose the same groups that you've had before if you're in the auditorium, or you can find a new group. And also feel free to write any of these answers down, especially if it can be an answer that can be changed a little bit depending on the situation, but you could use in more than one situation or scenario. So if you're online, I'm going to allow you to join any of the rooms. And then if you're the only one in the room, I will move you to another room. All right, we'll give another minute and a half. All right, I'll bring everybody in the breakout rooms back into the main session. Okay. So hopefully we've had a chance to discuss amongst ourselves in person and online. The challenge of juggling both. Usually I do teach this or do this workshop in person. Okay, so our scenario 2, again, your colleague has been given all the credit and asked to present at another meeting, and you have not even been acknowledged. So how do you respond? Would anybody like to give their 2 cents? Go up to the front of the room or provide any information online. You can feel free to unmute your mics as well if you're listening from online.
There is someone from the room here.
All right, thank you. So what I will do is that I will try to clarify. I will try to interfere or interrupt the meeting and ask, what about me? I mean, I played a role in this particular project and you want him to present it alone. Is there any reason? Maybe it's just for one person to present, who knows? But then I need to ask. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Yes, asking for clarification is a great way to acknowledge, like, hey, is there a piece missing here? And it also, if you're asking a question, it can come across a little bit more comfortably to some people, because sometimes if you don't ask a question and you come in and say, hey, what about me? And then not in a question type of way, that can come off a little aggressive. And unfortunately, that is just one of the challenges of working in this type of scenario. Anybody else?
Yeah, please.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so I agree with what she just said. I would also, right there during the meeting, say, but maybe not make it kind of aggressive. You could kind of play it innocent and say, oh, I would also love to participate. How can I, kind of do it like this? Not say, I also worked on it. Why am I not there? But oh, come, I could go with you. Let's do this together and kind of get yourself in there and see what they respond. Because if there's really a personal reason why the senior executive would prefer your colleague over you, you'd know it right there, because they'd have to come up with a quick response. Or maybe it's a valid reason, like only one can go, and then okay, well, that's
Yeah,
Good.
so I love your point. Excuse me. I love your point. But I mean, you saw me present with my colleague. I don't have to remind you that I am part of the project. I mean, I will make sure I don't make it aggressive. I mean, hey, but I'm here. Like, you know that I'm here. But then if I say, oh, I want to join, it looks as if I didn't really take part, or I'm just hiding in the corner, Just like, yeah, so it could work, but maybe not. Thank you.
Interestingly, so another reason why I included this example is it's very similar to bro appropriating. So this was a term that was coined a couple years ago. Or otherwise taking a woman's idea and taking credit for it. And what I have found in my own research is that this is not always done with negative intention. Sometimes it's just done by accident, that people don't realize how much of an effort that you've had in a project, especially if you're sharing it 50% with somebody else who happens to be male. And men do receive more credit for the work that they do. So very interesting issues that do come up, or scenarios that do come up for a lot of women. I think I interrupted somebody that was in person.
So there's someone who wants to make a comment. Hi, Melissa. This is Nadia. In such a situation, I would advise young ladies to, let's say the guy, his name is Mr. Jones, okay? And he's standing there and saying, okay, Mohammed, you did an excellent presentation. And he knows, or maybe he doesn't realize that Khulud, who's standing right next to him, is part of the team. So what she can say is, well, thank you very much, Mr. Jones. We really appreciate your great feedback. We both worked really hard on this. And she'll respond in a kind of positive way, because he can't, what will he respond to that? He can't turn around and say, oh, no, you didn't work on that. He's going to have to say, yes, oh, well, good job. I look forward to seeing you both at the next meeting. Or she could say, we'll be very happy to present this together next time as well. You know, so she's just, so basically she's confirming the statement without getting aggressive, or, you know, because she wants to keep a good image in his head as well. And the next time he may correct his behavior.
Absolutely. And I think making sure that we don't come off aggressive is a really key point to make when these scenarios do come up, because it may not always be intentional, and he may misunderstood, the senior executive may have misunderstood who was actually responsible for this and how much work was divided between the two. So I think that's a really important point to make. Very good. I think online we've got a few as well. So Manuel says, I would first begin by stating that this is a collaborative work, and then ask if there's a specific reason for choosing X to present alone. It's good. Shireen says, stand up for myself, and nicely mention the great addition I have done to the proposal. Use the we, so I stress that I need to be mentioned as per our room discussion. That's great. Frauke says, either if the situation allows, speaking up with that you would like to contribute to this meeting, highlighting why, for example, your expertise, or speak afterwards directly to the colleague and point out what the effect of not being at the meeting has on you, as often this is not realized, and have the colleague put you in the meeting. Very good as well. And it is, I think, unfortunate that sometimes our colleagues don't do that. And again, this is not just males on females, this is females for females as well. So something for us as women to pay attention to, that we do need to support our female colleagues as well. Was there another answer in the audience?
Yes. Okay, for me, I will wait until the meeting is finished, and I will talk to my professor alone. I will ask him if there is something wrong I did in this meeting, or if there is anything I can do to improve myself, why he just wants just my colleagues. So in this way, I think I will not affect my relationship with him. And maybe I did something wrong in the meeting that affected on me in the bad way. So yeah, because it's important to keep your relationships in good way, so it will be benefit for you in the future. I feel like
Definitely.
that.
Yeah, keeping the relationship positive is huge. I would caution about saying personally, so this, again, everybody be comfortable with what they want to do. But I would caution about saying if it's something that, like asking if it was your fault, because it wasn't. at least in this particular scenario that I've outlined, you haven't done anything wrong. And it might have just been an accident that the senior executive missed you or didn't realize what contribution that you had had. And so by opening that door, I think sometimes that can kind of lead down the wrong avenue. That's based on my personal experience. That is no research at all, but something I think to also just be cautious about is we do, as women, do tend to apologize a lot more than we should. Research has definitely shown that. So taking a step back and saying, actually, this is not necessarily my fault. This is something that you did, but working in a way that you're not throwing blame on anybody. Does anybody have any response to that? Or my recommendation on that? I'm just curious to see if someone would say the same. Okay, do we have any other responses, either online or in the auditorium? Oh, okay, so let's move on to scenario 3. All right, so this is an interesting one, and I have had a few female colleagues have very similar situations to this. So you are in a meeting with your colleagues and senior executives discussing a new project. You have a concern over a point in the contract or agreement that pertains to you. You mention that this needs to be changed. One of your colleagues says in a not so hushed aside to another colleague, she's a bit sensitive, with an eye roll. How do you respond? So again, if you want to go into your breakout rooms in the auditorium, online, I'm going to move everybody into breakout rooms again, and I'll give everybody about 5 minutes or so to come up with possible responses. All right, about 1 more minute. Take another 10 seconds or so. All right, so bringing everybody back into the main session. So scenario 3, she's a bit sensitive. How do we respond? Would anybody in the auditorium like to say a few words? I saw somebody walking in the auditorium. I'm not sure if you're walking to a microphone.
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So there are people in the room who want to answer to this scenario. I give them the microphone.
I think because it's such a ridiculous comment, like initially I would be like, excuse me. And then I would ask, what do you mean by that? And then just watch him get all twisted up trying to explain and then just laugh it off and continue. Because I feel like it's such a crazy comment that like he can't properly explain it. It's so sexist. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And again, that saying, excuse me, or can you explain that, or questioning that, I think is huge, because just like when somebody has to explain a joke, it's no longer funny. And again, you are acknowledging that really you said that. Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great response.
Good afternoon. This is Khulud Khatib. Well, thank you for bringing this up. Well, if I'm in that position, I would just ignore it, but then I would respond in a very professional way in the context of the meeting to show them that, you know what, even if you think I'm sensitive, I'm still competent to do my work in a very professional way. And that's what matters in that context.
Good. And bringing it back to your work, I think, is also really huge. Online, but yeah, we have a response online. So we agreed we would say something like, excuse me, I am proposing this because, and then highlighting why it's a good idea to make a change. And again, I think it's really good to acknowledge it and then bring it back to the work at hand. Very good.
Okay, so I will say the real comment that I will do. Honestly, if something happened to me, excuse my word, but I will say something like, fuck you. And this is, I know this is not the correct way, but please, can you comment on that?
Awesome. I think that's amazing. And I think I hope that more women get into a position where we feel that we can do that, because that is the best response. All right. So again, the reason I include that one is I have had female colleagues who have been in that situation before. And emotion, whether it's called for or not, is more commonly attributed to female personality traits over male ones. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that relationship doesn't necessarily exist in a professional setting, and it's not appropriate. Men are also more often described as leaders and mentors and achievers, and given or attributed more of a sense of a humor, whereas females are described more as emotional and sensitive. So really starting to separate that, I think, is really important. And also perceptions really do matter. So again, acknowledging it and moving on, I think, is really important. Okay, so we are coming to a close. So I just wanted to really quickly go through the next couple scenarios. We won't go into breakout rooms for them, but the reasons why I chose these. So the next one for scenario 4 was that somebody or a senior executive says, "Are you sure?" and questions your ability to do something that you know that you can do. And this very often, there we go. This often does happen to females. And it's, again, something that we need to start considering and be prepared for if this does happen, especially if it is happening from a senior leader. All right, and then really quickly to scenario 5. This is one that I also think is really funny because it does happen to me as well, is when you're asked to take meeting minutes. And this might be because you are the only female in a room, or maybe the youngest person in the room, and that happens to be female. So how you deal with somebody who consistently asks you to do menial tasks. And very often women are asked to contribute in ways that do not add value to their roles, or for tasks that are inclined less toward leadership, such as admin work. And again, something that we should be aware of. So thinking about how to respond just in general. So we did go through a few of these. Some people had, or actually everyone had amazing responses. So connecting your work to others. So how, if you were making a change or to a proposal or an agreement of some sort, how that connects to your work and how that affects others. And to be reminded that you are paid to have an opinion, whether you're a student, you're a faculty member in research, or you're an administrator. You are paid to have an opinion. You are there because you have something to contribute. And it's important that we do remind ourselves of this. Use descriptive words for yourself that carry confidence and authority. So for example, using words like leader, mentor, achiever, and refrain from communal language, which is often associated with females, like helping, supportive, or friendly. So really, again, the words that you choose to use will make a difference. Bringing the topic back around to your own work, your contribution, and your ability to get things done. Humor always helps. So the nice big F-bomb, always good. It's got some laughs toward it. And recognizing who the people you are working with and how often you're working with them. So how you do respond will affect future interactions, especially if you're in a collaborative sphere. And if you're working with me, you'll know that I do this myself, is use research to support your opinions and recommendations. So you come in prepared as much as possible, when possible. So responses in your back pocket. Again, one of the things that makes it challenging to respond to gray zone comments or just comments that are derogatory in general are the emotional side effects of being in a room and having people stare at you when you're not prepared for that. So some of the ones that I have in my back pocket that you're free to use is, I'm glad I'm not judged on X and instead judged by Y. So for an example would be, I'm glad I'm not judged on my shoes, instead judged on my research. Another example is, am I being X or am I being Y? So am I being sensitive or am I being pragmatic? So bringing it back to where you want to go. And then when in doubt, a simple excuse me, or can you explain that? You've heard it and you're not letting it slide. And I think really acknowledging these in front of the group is one of the best things that can help us so that we're not letting it happen in the future. So some resources, there's a lot of really great research that's out from so many different areas. I do really like a lot of the content that comes out from the Harvard Business Review. So how women can get comfortable playing politics was a really great article that actually came out just last year. And the coded language that holds women back at work. The other really interesting thing, and so this bottom piece here actually did come from how women can get comfortable playing politics, is attending a women's conference like this can really help you and provide a supportive environment to share some of the struggles you may be going through and to connect you with other women and other strong women, and as well how to respond in situations that are a little bit gray zone, and again, how to play politics. So I think this is a really great step, and I'm really glad that everybody was able to attend today. I do have some references here, and I will also share this slide with the team if anybody is interested. And I will also put in the comments my email, as I'm happy to chat to anybody in person when I'm back at KAUST, which will be the beginning of April at Ramadan, or via email.
Thank you very much, Melissa. That was a really great and inspiring workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a fabulous afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.